Welcome to the Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast, where you get multifamily investing made real. Learn from top players in the real estate investment world as they share their secrets with you and discover proven strategies on apartment investing that actually work. To learn more about Wheelbarrow Profits, visit jakeandgino.com, your one-stop shop for everything multifamily. Now to your hosts, Jake and Gino.
Hello, everybody. This is Jake Stenziano, host of the Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast, here with my co-host, the multifamily mentor, the coach, the chef, the father of six, the best-selling author, the G-Daddy, Gino Barbaro. Gino, how's it going?
Jake, I'm doing great today. I'm excited about today's show. We've got an amazing guest. I think he changed my life about a year and a half ago, made me focus on something very passionate, important to me. So I'm really excited to bring the knowledge today, bring the pain, as you would say.
We got a great guest. We got great deal flow. Things are good. We like it. So before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, CrowdStreet, who knows you don't have to know a guy to find a quality commercial real estate investment opportunity. Learn more at crowdstreet.com/wheelbarrow. And for visiting their site, they're going to give you a free gift. Today's guest is JayPapasan. Jay is a best-selling author that serves as vice president and executive editor at Keller Williams Realty International, the world's largest real estate company. I used the Keller broker on my last deal. Very, very good folks. It's a little plug there. The books he's helped craft have collectively sold over 8 million copies. His most recent work with Gary Keller on The One Thing has sold over 1 million copies worldwide and garnered more than 300 appearances on national bestsellers lists, including #1 on the Wall Street Journal's hardcover bestseller list. So without further ado, Jay, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Gino, Jake. This is great fun. Thanks.
Hey, love it that you're here. Just let's get kicked off. Tell us your real estate background and actually how you got started in the business.
Okay. Well, I mean, I backed into real estate, that's for sure. I was an English major, French major. I wanted to write books. So I worked in publishing in New York for a number of years. And when my wife and I relocated to Austin, Texas in 2000, she kicked me out of the house, said, you got to get a job. I was freelancing, not making very much money. And as an introvert, not meeting anybody. And it wasn't the money. She said, get out and meet some people. And I took a job at a sleepy little real estate company called Keller Williams. And in 2000, it was September 3rd, I think. It was like the first work day after Labor Day in 2000. Back then, there were about 27 employees and 6,700 agents. And today, there's probably 300 employees and a little over 175,000 agents worldwide.
Wow.
So it's been kind of a rocket ride, and my real estate knowledge, found out that my co-author, Gary Keller, wanted to write books. So I got to get back in publishing, but in real estate. And he's been my investor mentor. And I mean, it's pretty nice to have a self-made billionaire telling you what to do in real estate. The guy knows his stuff, and I try to be a good student of the game.
Nice.
So why did you choose Keller Williams? What drew you to that brand?
I didn't know anything different. I mean, I didn't know anything about real estate brands at the time. But when I applied for a job, I had, at that time, published books that had sold, well over 1 million copies as an editor. And I was applying for a newsletter writer job, right? I just wanted a writing job in any company because there was no publishing in Austin. And I went through like 5 interviews, and I had to take 2 behavioral assessments. I remember telling my wife, it's like, this is a crazy company. I think it's a front for the CIA. And I was being serious. I thought, okay, I'm about to get into the spy business, and their front in Austin, Texas happens to be a real estate franchise company. Because who does that many interviews for a newsletter writer? And everything about the company, it's one of those things like on the front end, most people say, oh, they throw everything at you and then you're done. I feel like every year I'm here, I keep finding more layers. It's a very entrepreneurial company. They create a lot of opportunity inside and out. And that's why I stuck around. I've gotten to start 2 businesses within the business. And Gary just believes in he believes investing in people, right? And that's ultimately the best investment. And the best evidence I could give you is earlier this year, we surpassed $1 billion that we've given away in profit share. And so didn't have to do it, But he created a system that allows people to grow with the business and that gives them a reason to grow the business. And I just don't know anybody who does that. I mean, so that's why I'm here. And that's why I stuck with Keller Williams. I never even looked at anybody else.
So what did you find, I guess, challenging when you got into real estate? What were the stumbling blocks that you came up against?
It's incredibly local industry, right? So it's just now technology is wading into the fray because they see a highly fragmented industry, and real estate is sold differently in every county, in every parish, and the regulations tend to be highly local. And as investors, you and I both know, all of those inefficiencies create opportunity for somebody who's willing to dig for it. And that's why, the big money from the technology is showing up in real estate today. But I like that. To me, it felt like a really big puzzle to unravel. And I had a really good guide. I mean, Gary, the first thing we did was write a book about how to have a career in real estate sales. And I could have told you before that I wouldn't have been at all interested in it. But I was like, okay, this is just a microcosm of any service business. And how do you make it efficient? How do you learn to leverage your business through other people? And then we wrote a couple of books on investing, and that changed my life. The first book that we did together that really changed me was The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, because I looked up and realized that my income was not going to be my wealth, that my wife and I had to do different things. And that's when we became investors, is when we were writing that book. And it just like every couple of years,
so
we write another
red book and the blue book. That's what I call
of
it.
Growth.
Yes. That's great. So what have you seen different in the last 17 years in the whole real estate space? Talk a little bit about the technology and the other aspects that you really said, this is really the disruptions coming in this area.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different places it's coming from, right? You can look at Zillow. I mean, back in 2001 or 2, basically the industry voted to give away all their information when they made it available on Realtor.com. And if you look at the commercial space, if you want data, you've got to go to a local person to get it. I don't know which play is better in the long run, but the internet showed up, I mean, really early in my career, around 2001, when all of a sudden, instead of going to a realtor, you got more and more information from the web. And ironically, all the stats that I've looked at every year, the number of people who choose to act independently of a realtor actually goes down. Like you show them all the complexity and, and they say, well, you know what? I think maybe I do want an expert to help me. That's my read on that. But so there's billions and billions of dollars in commissions. That's what's attracting the tech dollars. They want to find ways to step into that. And I got to tell you, there's probably a lot of room for more efficiencies. But I don't see a future without real estate professionals in it. The fact that you two, as many investments as you make, still work with brokers says a lot.
We get our deals from brokers.
What's that?
We get all our deals from brokers. Everyone's always like, well, where do you find a deal? 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 And we're like, guys, we have solid relationships with the 5 brokers in town that do the deals.
There you go.
We're closers and we get the deals done. So when they get a good deal, they bring it to us and we perform. That's how it works. And everyone's looking for like this like, magic recipe. And I'm like, guys, this is what you do. So.
If you can find a broker who gets your criteria, there's no better way. Because every day they're driving the streets. It gets you out of the job of being a bird dog and lets them do that for you. And given the cost of it, I'll do it all day long. And also, frankly, my wife's the realtor. I'm the investor in the family. She also is an investor, but formally she's a realtor, right? So she has different requirements when she makes an offer on a home. So we step up. I mean, I love having the E&O benefits of making an offer through a realtor. There's a lot of little benefits, but mostly it's just their eyes on the street. They can bring me deals. I can say no, but I just like not having to do that job. I used to enjoy it, but I'd much rather have someone bring a deal to me today.
Yep.
I agree with that. When you guys wrote The One Thing, what was that inspiration for the book? Let's jump into that book because I want people to understand how powerful it was for me and how inspirational it is for a lot of people. I've gotten tons of recommendations. They'll say, hey, that was the book for me.
It's funny. At the time, this has been around 2009. I get the dates a little bit mixed up in my head, but I was working on a course. I was at that time running our education unit for Keller Williams. And Gary was going to take it home and write a new introduction for it. He wanted to jazz it up. And he came back with a short essay called The Power of One. And it was the basic idea of the book, right? That when you focus on fewer things, you tend to get better results. And he wrote this really impassioned essay. And I remember I came back and I said, Gary, I think this is a book. And I kind of think it's not just a book. I think it's your book. At that point, we'd worked together long enough that I knew as smart as he is, as hardworking as he is, his real superpower is his willingness to work hard to figure out what the real priority is, and his willingness to give that more resources and time than anyone else. And it's not about long hours. It's not about IQ. He's just willing to identify the priority and sacrifice everything to get that number one. So it felt like a book that lined up with his actual success. So that's where it came from. It was an essay. And then we spent close to 4.5 years, almost 5 years researching it. So it wasn't just Gary and Jay's ideas. We had a hypothesis and we went out and we tried to prove it.
So what do you think is the key message in the one thing? If people had to take away that key message, can you encapsulate that for us?
I think that if you lined it up, and I was trying to teach my, a 12-year-old how to live the book, it's just about taking a moment, right? Hopefully every day, to identify what your real priority is. And we call it asking the focusing question, right? What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else is easier or necessary? It's kind of a long question, but it rolls off the tongue if you read the book enough. And it gets you to not a bunch of answers. It tends to get you to the thing that you're most leveraged, right? In the sense of the 80-20 principle, the one thing that'll get you the biggest results. And then we want you to start with that. That would be the simplest way. In practice, as an investor, as a writer, whatever your profession is, there tends to be a very small set, often one thing that if you got to practice that on a regular basis, you'll become great, right? That's how you become a master at what you do. And so the longer version is when you know what that is. If you're in sales, right? Are you asking for business? How do you make a habit of the thing that's most important to your career? And we go into kind of the science of what that looks like and how to block time on your calendar to make it easier. And, I don't think anything that we said is necessarily new. Our goal was to put it in a framework where people could actually take action on it.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I want to jump in real quick and ask a question. So
Sure, Jay.
For myself here, I buy apartments, right? Gino and I buy apartments, and I run the property management group for our for our company. Do you have a way to break it down for somebody where you could ask me like a series of a few questions to hone in on what that is? Do you guys ever do stuff like this, or?
Sure. You want to role play it right now and just see if it works?
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, yeah, man, throw me out there. I'm willing to take it.
Here's the thing. Like, so I don't know what your one thing is. Hopefully you do.
Yeah.
So if you were to look back, at the course of your investing career, what do you think is the number one activity that you do that leads to your success buying apartment complexes?
The one thing that I do that leads to the success of, getting out there and probably, working with brokers and evaluating more deals and putting offers in, right?
Okay. That's three things. I heard three things. So networking with brokers, evaluating deals, and making offers.
That's how you get deals done, right?
Yeah. So if you only could do one of those things, what would it be?
Man, that's tough. I guess I'd have to network because you can't get the deal without networking, right? So maybe I need to drink more and do more cocktail mixers, Gino. I need to start having a few more, Keller One martinis here.
There you go. All right. So if you got that and you nailed it 100%, but you could do one more thing, what would the other thing be?
It would be then it would be the evaluating the deals, right?
Okay, and then presumably the third thing would be make offers. So you actually set them in the order of priority. So what's interesting is the one thing would tell us that networking with professionals, right, the people who find you deals, should be the first thing you put on your calendar every week.
Wow. And
that everything else revolves around it. Now, it doesn't mean you give it 100% of your time because, like most people, you don't get to just do one thing.
Yeah.
But we use the metaphor of a domino run, right? If you line up your dominoes, what happens when you knock over the first one?
Exactly what we just said.
Right.
Literally. Like, because it was like you network, you analyze, you offer, right?
Yeah. And so there tends to be an order. And what we tend to do is we do things in the order they show up in our life or the order we wrote them down in our notebook. Mm-hmm. But if you just stop, you step back and go, all right, these are the three things that really lead to my success. I could put metrics around this. If I was a coach for a football team, right, you know that they do this.
Yeah.
Like they have to go find talent, right? They have to recruit talent. They have to coach talent, and they have to do something else, practice. And they would track those numbers. It would be a big deal for them. So you could do the same thing. So when I look at my month or my week or my year, what are the core networking activities I'm going to do to make sure I have deal flow?
Yep.
Do I have space blocked on my calendar every week to evaluate deals? Right? And then how many offers do I have to make on a monthly basis to know that, you know what, I'm going to not always get my offers accepted, but if I put my criteria out enough, I know that I'll get my deals to hit my goals. Mm-hmm. And that would be the way we would talk or coach someone in the one thing framework, is we truly try to eliminate, because I guarantee you, if you have, like, how many units do you manage right now?
I think we own 850 apartments right now.
So there's more than a few toilets that are getting clogged up and tenants that are not paying the rent. Like, it's not simple, but it can be simplified in terms of how you approach it. It doesn't mean those things don't have to be dealt with, that you don't have to work with your property managers, but you should look at the majority of my time is going to go to the core activities that lead to my success. And the rest is going to have to take care of itself. And most people just work from the order of what's the most urgent, not what's most important. And that's how they end up not really making the progress that they could.
It's so interesting too, because look at college football. So much time needs to spend on recruiting, right? You were just talking about a football coach. You got to be out there recruiting nonstop to be able to get those players in, and then they're out in 4 years. So that's like flipping houses, man. That's why I would rather be an NFL coach.
That's the hardest job in the world. If you correlate it to business, as a business person, I think recruiting's the number one thing. Yeah. Right. And if you have the right quarterback on your team, you can have mediocre receivers and running backs, right?
Tom Brady.
The top, yeah, exactly. If you have the top talent there, it makes everything else easier. That's the way it works.
Yep.
And it makes, great players make mediocre coaches Hall of Famers.
Yep.
So if you get the dominoes in the right order, then you expend your resources and time, you invest those things appropriately. So that's the framework. And I believe the rubber hits the road with your calendar. And there's studies that would show that just the act of saying, okay, I know I need to do this, so when am I going to do it? And literally going to your calendar and blocking off that time as an appointment with yourself to do those things makes you about 3 times more likely to actually do them. It's one thing to have a to-do list. God bless you. I love it.
Old school, man. All my employees pick on me because I write stuff down on a card stock, but I don't care. Thank you. Thank you.
No, and I love
that all the time.
But here's the problem. If I'm looking at my calendar on this, I can't even see a full day.
Yep.
And if you have a big plan, this is language I'm stealing right from Gary. He goes, if you want to do big things, you need to have a big view of time. So I look at my writing commitments for the whole month. How many days do I have? Because that's my one thing, right? So how many writing days do I have this month? Well, it's the holidays. I really only had about 2.5 weeks to work with. So I better be really, really tough on not violating those days on a short month, or I'm going to fall behind. And it's just a bigger framework to view time. So it's super simple, but people say, hey, Jay, can I meet with you for lunch on the 15th? I look at my calendar. There's a W with a circle around it. That says writing day. I'm like, dude, I can't. I already have another commitment that day. How about the 16th? How about Saturday, breakfast? And most people will revolve around your schedule because you actually have priorities. Yep. Are y'all old enough to remember going to Blockbuster Video?
Yep.
Okay. If you ever went with a group, the person who always got to pick the video is the person who knew what they wanted. Right? If you show up and you don't have a strong opinion, you're not picking the movie. And if you actually have priorities on your calendar, you get to often dictate when you meet with other people, because most people are just revolving around your priorities anyway. So it's a real simple hack that leads to a lot of success.
You know what the thing people get hung up at? This takes me an hour to an hour and a half every Saturday or Sunday morning, whichever day I do it. And I haven't missed it for probably 9 or 10 years, literally.
Wow.
And but
you predate the book by a long shot then. So the book aligned with your values.
Oh yeah. I'm just saying, like, this is, I did it, going back, because I used to be a pharmaceutical rep, right? Did pharmaceutical and vaccines, and I would want to know exactly which doctor in my route I was going to go to, and so I would fill it up. I would try to front load it, and then as guys fell off, they could go into Thursday, Friday if it needed to happen, right? And this is the same way I do it. Monday through Wednesday is usually very heavy because I know I'm not going to get to all of it. So then some of it will go into Thursday, Friday. I actually can only do 1 week at a time. I have another calendar here on the side of the desk that actually gets the month planned out. I use the month. I have a cadence of accountability on my desktop, and then on the back, things that spill over that gets rolled in. So I have 3 areas where I'm pulling from to fill my week. And man, it's amazing. But I basically get up, I follow the yellow brick road every day, and then it's over, and then I start it again. And I check it, before I go to bed, because I think there's something that kind of gets put in the subconscious there that helps. But
I invest probably 30 minutes a week in taking my goals and making sure my calendar reflects them.
Yep.
That's about how long it takes me. I've been doing it for 17 years. This is how Gary taught me to manage my time before we even wrote the book. And so, but before the beginning of a month, I usually will look at the whole month, and that can take an hour to an hour and a half. So 1 week a month is much longer. And then right now, my wife and I are in full planning for all of next year. And I'm trying to say, all right, how many writing days can I get next year? Because we're going to put our vacation on there first, right? There's events that I can't avoid going to, big conferences that I'm committed to going. So those days are removed. And after time for me, right, which is time off. If you don't do that, you burn out if you're doing big things. You've got the time that you have to commit to other people that you don't get to choose, like company meetings, board meetings, that sort of thing. Then I look at my first priority is writing. How many days can I get in there? And everything else has to slot around it. It's kind of like putting a boulder in the middle of a stream. The stream is going to flow around it. But if you wait to the last minute, you may not be able to get it in there. And that's the problem with vacations and other things. If you're just trying to work your big priorities in around everything else, they often don't make it in.
Yeah.
So Jake, this has been important for like the last 15 minutes we've been talking. Most people discount this and they don't think it's important, but for all the Jake and Gino community, they need to focus on this because this is really important, because most guys are doing this part-time. And if that one thing is to become financially free and they're working a 9-to-5 job, they need to be able to carve out X amount of time per week to do this. So they need to create a calendar. They need to create that cadence of accountability, and they need to be able to put that time aside to work on their multifamily business. So I'm so happy that you laid this out, because I think it's really, really, really important for us to do this.
I love the language, the cadence of accountability.
I came up with that.
That's good, because it's about timing, right? Yeah. And to me, if you have the time allocated to your priorities, our tendency is to follow our calendar. We all know what to do. It vibrates, we look and we go, oh, we have an appointment in 15 minutes. And I use that as a cue to transition if I'm transitioning from one priority to the next. But I just treat my calendar first for it's appointments with myself to do my work. And second, it's appointments with other people. And most people get that flipped.
Yeah, Gary, in the book, you talked about multitasking. Tell the audience why you think it doesn't work. And I totally agree with the reason why it's just futile.
There's like 7 reasons we could go into. I mean, there's a guy, Clifford Nass, who did a pretty detailed study. He went into the bias thinking that multitaskers had some magical power, and he didn't understand it because he was kind of a scientist and kind of focused. So he got together, I think, 220 grad students, half of which said they're awesome multitaskers and half who said that they were no good at it. And he gave them a battery of tests. And remember, his bias was thinking that multitasking was real. And he was shocked to find out that in every single test, the people who were bad at multitasking performed better than the people who said they were good at it, including a test of multitasking. And so it makes you less effective. There was a study from King's College that shows it actually cuts your IQ. People on marijuana have higher IQs than people who are multitasking.
Scatterbrained. This is your brain on multitasking. Remember the brain on joke?
There we go. The egg frying in the pan. You got it. And it's funny, chronic multitaskers, if you ask them how long it takes to do anything, they always estimate long, because it does take them longer. So you lose, your sense of time gets skewed, your effects get skewed, and you also are more likely to create loose ends. Mm-hmm. So one of the little studies that we read talked about the fact that the longer you spend switched from your primary work to whatever distracted you, the less likely you are to get back to your primary work that day. And that's how you leave loose ends, like emails you didn't finish in an open window because you got distracted by Twitter or whatever that is. So I could go on and on and on, right? It stresses you out, it dumbs you down, it makes you less effective. Now, here's the reality. There are engineers at Apple, Google, right, at Microsoft that are paid millions and millions of dollars to scientifically distract us all day long. So when you know your number one thing, and you're going to do it, what I usually tell folks, and I know Gary would say the same thing, is just don't multitask when you're doing your number one priority. Start there and see how that works for you.
It's great advice.
So, your networking activities, right? Probably wouldn't serve you to go to a networking with a bunch of investor brokers and be constantly like looking at your phone and playing Clash of Clans or something, right? You're going to go, all right, this guy's a joker. He's not really paying attention to me.
Yep.
So give that your full focus because it's your number one. And I would tell you that also works in your personal life. When my kids were small, my moment with them was reading books at night, bath time and book time. And it would have been criminal for me to have been multitasking and checking fantasy football scores while I was doing that. Now, are we human? Do we sometimes do that crap? Yes. But it's more of a call to action. When you're doing your most important work, right, that's when you don't multitask. If we were bus drivers, pilots, or surgeons, we would be criminally liable for multitasking, right? Because there are other people's lives at stake.
Mm-hmm.
If we're doing our most important work, evaluating deals, whatever it is, whose life's at stake if we're multitasking then?
Our companies.
Well, if you have a company, it's your own life's at stake, right?
No,
you're
that's
putting
what I'm saying.
yourself at risk.
Yeah.
If this is your most important work and you're giving it partial effort, then that's really, you're putting your own life at risk.
Yeah, this is Buddhism for entrepreneurs, right? You got to be present. You got to be in the moment, right? Clear the thoughts, be one with the work, man.
I can't remember his name. Billy Collins, who was our poet laureate, he said of multitasking, a Buddhist would call this monkey mind.
Yeah.
And I think Gary's saying, yeah, you're just driving yourself bananas.
Yeah.
But it is true. I don't think that you have to be perfect all the time, especially in today. But when you're doing your top priority, we would just encourage you, don't multitask because it really makes you ineffective.
Yeah, so you shut the phone off when you're writing, I'm guessing. You're probably not even in the same room, right?
I've got it on Do Not Disturb right now, and I've got a Do Not Disturb sign on my door.
Leave me alone!
I've taught the world to kind of respect that. And I put my phone, not just on airplane mode, you have to take the Wi-Fi off too. Because, if you haven't figured this out, you have to do that so that texts don't get through. There's now that wonderful half moon feature on the iPhone. I don't know if you have a different version, but if you do that, it really is Do Not Disturb.
Yeah.
And no one that's not on your favorites list can get through to you. So I do try to wall off my life when I'm trying to do those important things. I have two browsers. I'm pointing to my two screens. When I'm writing, I use my Chrome because I don't have any social media passwords saved there. Right. So if I want to get tempted and go do something I'm not supposed to do, and then when I'm not in writing mode, I have Firefox open, and that's got all of those tabs that are ready to go. And so if I have a few minutes, I can go and triage, direct messages in Twitter or whatever that is, just to pass, to transition to the next task. So yeah, I try to we call it creating a bunker. Find a place where you can really insulate your attention. It looks like Jake, you're sitting at a desk with all of your planning around you. Everybody has a bunker. Maybe it's in a coffee shop. Maybe I knew one lady that would go to an empty conference room in her work because she literally couldn't focus in her own office for fear, and she would step over and get busy with other people's work.
No, this is my home office. I work home because when I'm at the properties in our offices at the apartment complexes, it's just in and out, and I can't get anything done. So the door's locked right now, and my 3-year-old, she'll come and jiggle on it, and she can't get in. And I know she's there, but she's not getting through. Okay,
that's called the bunker, right? And we usually teach people store everything you need in your bunker, wherever that is. So if you're going to a coffee shop, have like a backpack that's your work backpack, and have everything that you might need for that work, so that where you're there, you don't get distracted. Because what happens is you step out of your bunker, like you're in your office right now, Jake, and you look down and you're out of coffee. Well, now you have to exit the bunker to go get that coffee. And what's going to happen? Your 3-year-old's going to toddle up and say, Daddy, Daddy, play with me.
Yep.
And what sucks is you don't want to tell your 3-year-old or your teammate, say, I'm sorry, you're not my one thing right now. So it's your fault. We call it getting sniped. If you step out of your bunker, you could get sniped.
Now he's playing Modern Warfare.
Yeah, there we go.
So I got a really big closet off the side here I'm pointing to. I'm gonna put a fridge in there. I got the bathroom right there. So I'm going to literally shut it down. We're gonna do some remodeling over here, a la Keller Williams, and we're gonna bunk it up.
You got me on one. We've got everything figured out, coffee, all of that stuff, except a bathroom. I literally have to leave the bunker. to go there. So someday I'll aspire to have my own in-office bathroom.
We're getting there, man.
The point there is just not to distract yourself unintentionally.
Oh, man.
So, Jay, let me ask you, in the book, you define success. Can you give me your definition of what success looks like to you?
It's really struggle. Success is in the subtitle, and we debated that. In the end, in the book, we declared that success is getting what you want. And the challenge, that's a really broad definition, right? So did you get what you want? Great, you're success. My experience, most people don't know what they actually want. And you can ask them, and they know what they don't want. But if you ask them, like, in 5 years, where do you want to be? How many young people do you know, or even old people, that have a really clear answer for that?
5%, I would say.
Yeah. That's probably really accurate, actually, now that I think about it. And I've asked that to a lot of people. It's one of my standard interview questions. And so you look up, and I think a lot of people have a sense of the next thing, but not the big thing that they're looking for. They don't know what the journey they're on. And so a big part of the book, we talk about figuring out what your one thing is on a broader sense. Do I want to be an investor? Do I want to be an entrepreneur? Do I want to be an employee? Do I want to have a job that allows me to nurture and help other people? Do I want to be in service? Do I want to be a surgeon? It doesn't matter. Your thing is your thing. But if you don't stop and actually consider the question, you don't get to answer it. And for young people in particular, this can be really, tough, because they don't even have enough life experience to know what they want to do. And that's totally understandable. But there's a great book called The Defining Decade, and I'm looking at it on my shelf up there. And the psychologist who works with young people described the dilemma of, if you were swimming in the middle of the ocean and there was no land in sight, most people go into panic mode for fear they're swimming the wrong direction. And so they don't want to go in the wrong direction. The problem is, if you don't go in any direction, you're going to drown. And so I always remember that, because the key to kind of figuring this out, especially when you're young, is go try something. If you think you want to work with people, go find the job where you get to work with people. If you think you want to work with books, go find the job with books. Whatever that is, go explore it. Worst case scenario, you get to eliminate it. And I think that our unconscious, the things inside us, are usually pointing us in pretty much the right direction. It's just a matter of refining it and refining it and refining it. So anyway, that's a big part of the book, is figuring out what's the journey you're on. Where do you want to be ultimately? Because the only way to know what the right next thing is, the one thing this year or this month, is to have a bigger vision down the line that you're working backwards from. I just threw a whole bunch of stuff.
Great, I love it. You did, actually.
No, I found out.
I'm trying to digest that, because I always.
Right. I was just saying, I found out real early.
Did you find out what you wanted to do?
Yeah. No, but it was like, I worked at a Christmas tree farm when I was like 15, and they were paying me $3 an hour. Okay, I definitely don't want to do this. But then I upgraded to the lumber yard, and that was like $6 an hour. And I really hated that one. So I started figuring out, okay, this kind of manual labor stuff is not really what I'm looking to do, right?
But what they both had in common is that you got rewarded by your effort, right? So if you're selling stuff at $3 or whatever, like, you can find places that you got into. You said you were in sales, medical sales?
Well, it started at Radio Shack, and I got this Radio Shack. Everyone picks on me because Radio Shack launched my career, but it was a commission-based sales job in college. Immediately, I was #1 in the district, and I rode that into literally a business-to-business cell phone job, and then I rolled that into like the medical stuff. So it all started with that commission-based sales job. I was like, oh my God, I'm making like $30 an hour right now selling people cell phones. Whereas before I was making $6 doing like this grunt work. And I'm like, I'm working like, this is easy. This is a joke. I can't believe they're paying me for this. Whereas before it was work, right?
I think that's the kind of meta question that people don't know to ask. So like, do you like the security of knowing what you're paid? Like, if I just work 8 hours, I know what I'm going to get. Some people, that's torture, right? Especially if it involves moving lumber around.
Yeah.
And then there's other people who don't need to be guaranteed anything as long as they have upside.
Yep.
And I remember I interviewed this guy, his name was Greg, and I'm forgetting his name, for the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And he was a bartender. And he made a lot of money bartending in California, like $350 a night way back in the day. And that was a lot of money back then. Mm-hmm. And he remembers looking up, and he was moonlighting as a real estate agent. And he was writing a contract that was going to pay him $3,500. And he was worried about showing up late for a job that at best, after 6 hours, he would pocket $350. And so the commonality, bartending, selling real estate, They're both service related, and you both can earn income based on how well you do your job, right? So they're broadly the same. What he needed to know is he was in the right venture. He just needed to get into the right like vertical within it. Like, this is the kind of job that's going to make me happy, but he wasn't working in the right place. So he got into real estate, and I think he became #1 for Prudential or something like that, and probably worked less and had an easier time, and his clothes never smelled like smoke. Right, Gino? You worked in the restaurant industry.
Yes. It's awful. Garlic. It smelled like garlic. That was
There we
me.
go.
So let me ask you, Jay, last question before we get to the short answer. What is your best tip for listeners about the one thing? How can they start in the one thing other than reading the book? They all have to go out and read the book, buy the book. That's a no-brainer. But what would be your tip for them?
I mean, honestly, I hope they read the book, but I'll take them off the hook. I just say, take a minute and ask the question around something that really matters to you. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or necessary? However you hear that question, for my job, for my marriage, for my health, and then just listen to the answer, right? Oh, I really should go on a diet. Or, with my wife, I really should just ask her the question, how was your day? With the moment I walk in, like, the answer is usually really specific, and there are no right or wrong in general. But I would encourage people to ask the question, listen to the answer, and then try to do that for a period of time. We call it a 66-day challenge, because on average, if you do something 66 times in a row, it'll become a habit.
We're going to get into that in a minute here.
Oh, well, cool. That would be the one big piece of advice, is just live the basic, most tiny fundamental of the book. And that's where you start to get the returns. Usually about a week or two in, people are like, oh, I can switch to my next thing. And we tell people to stick around. We've taken about 2,500 people through a 66-day challenge now. And it's really around week 4 or 5 out of the 10 total weeks of 66 days that they start getting returns. They start seeing that things are getting easier. Most people just don't stick around that long. And when it starts feeding you, it gets easier and easier. And then you go, oh, now I know how to change my behavior. And that, to me, is the ultimate superpower. If you can figure out how to adjust your behavior so that you do what you need to do when you need to do it, everything else follows that.
Gino, it sounds like beginner multifamily investors. They just don't hang in the game long enough to see a return.
Well, isn't that the truth about most things that grow exponentially? That it feels like nothing's happening until it happens so big, you can't get your mind around it. And, that whole saying about they quit just before the results showed up, I mean, I see that all day long.
It took us 22 months, I think, to get our first deal. We almost quit at about month 18, and that was 2013 when we started. And now we have a $50 million real estate portfolio of apartments. And it's like, wow. It's like almost like, but it's like the overnight success thing, right? It took us 2 years to even get that one shitty little deal that it all started with. And then the snowball kicked in, and it was just like, let's go. So it's just, it's how those things happen. So,
but that's a mantra in investing. I've been a part of enough investing books. The people who have clear criteria and are willing to say no, 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 no. Like a yes takes 1,000 no's is one of the big ahas I got from the one thing. Like, when you really say yes to something, you're saying no to 1,000 others. And if you've got this vision of what a good multifamily means for you, you got to be willing to say no to everything else until you find it. Because when you do, it makes everything else just suddenly open up for you, right? Now you've got more credit and cash flow to buy the next one. And all these things start to roll in your direction. Most people are way too impatient to wait for that good deal. So they'll take 100%. A marginal one.
It's 100%.
They'll take a marginal deal, and it kind of derails the whole process.
Or they take nothing and just think, this is too hard, I won't do it.
True. They either bail out.
Yes.
I actually would rather them bail out than take a bad deal, because the one bad deal knocks you out of investing for your life.
Yes. Man, I'm loving this. I'm loving this.
Who taught you to be that patient? Most people would never have waited 22 months.
I'm just cheap.
Okay, then that's good. What a wonderful quality.
Cheap and determined, and have a lot of persistence. It's a quick shout out to CrowdStreet here, a sponsor who believes that investors of all sizes should have access to quality commercial real estate investment opportunities. The CrowdStreet marketplace features vetted commercial real estate investment offerings from over 100 sponsors from across the U.S. Download a free copy of their commercial real estate investing guide at crowdstreet.com/wheelbarrow. Gino Barbaro, we're going to get something on there early 2018, probably, correct?
We are.
We're working on it. CrowdStreet.
That's our one thing this year, right? Yes.
I don't know if it's our one thing, but we're trying to get on there. So we got one coming. So, okay. Jay, I want to get into habits with you because I think that they're so important. And I want to know what is, and this is a one thing question. What is the one habit that you've done on a daily or weekly basis that has really, launched your career and made you successful?
I'll make it one about investing. So way back in 2004, when we were writing The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, Gary talked about how his number one financial habit was tracking his net worth. And I remember being in the room, helping him write that section. And he talked about how his mentor at that time made him fill out a mortgage application every week. And essentially a mortgage application, you have to list all your assets, all your debts, right?
Yep.
And he started having these huge ahas about where his money was coming from. Like, what happens when you buy a car and you drive it off the lot? Right?
Loading the asset side, reducing the liability side, right?
Yeah, but you get a depreciating asset, right? You buy a 30,000 brand new car.
No, the car's a liability.
Yeah, it's a liability. It's an asset, but it's a depreciating one, right? It has value, but it goes down. And when you drive it off the lot, it goes down like 20%.
Yeah.
And most people don't get that. I mean, I literally have heard people say, oh, this weekend there was a sale on and I invested in a new couch. And I'm like, no,
Gino and I say we lump all this stuff in the liability section. Like we don't even, this is bad stuff, right? This is like personal debt. We don't want it.
So I think that teaches you a million lessons, and that might be way below the level that your students in your community's at. But I know my wife and I started doing that every month, and we've been doing it since 2002. The first time we did it, the only asset we owned was a Tercel that we both had to share. And our net worth was $2,300, $2,200, somewhere right in there. But the journey of awareness of, we have money. Do we have money to invest? Are we investing it in real assets that grow over time? Taught us a million lessons. And that's just a habit. I track my net worth every week now. And it allows me to be really cognizant of what my portfolio is, how fast it's growing, whether I have enough reserves. That one exercise teaches me a lot of things. So that to me is the ultimate investor habit that I learned from Gary and that I usually try to get other people doing.
Yeah. And if, for the investors out there, you want to get one of these Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae loans, right? They're going to want that from you. So why don't you just tee it up now, keep that baby updated. So when they ask for the package, you hit send and you're done with it, right?
Well, today I would just tell you, I use something like mint.com. I used to do it in a spreadsheet, right? I didn't want to fill out a mortgage application every single time, but you certainly can.
No, you save them to your desktop, and then just when the new asset comes in, you plop it in, and you're done.
Yeah. You just update it, and then you get to see it grow over time. It became a game for us.
What you say you use what.com?
Mint.com. It's part of the Quicken world.
Yeah.
And it's free. You can add all of your real estate holdings in there. It'll give you a Zestimate, which I really don't build into. So we usually will get a realtor to give us the estimated value at least once annually, and we'll subtract 6%. And then you can track your mortgages. So all of the debt pay down all happens in the system, and it tells you what your net worth is.
So it just keeps it rolling for you. Does it automatically?
Yep. And you have to adjust values manually for businesses and real estate. I don't trust what they have in there.
Sure. That's pretty cool. I'm going to check that out. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Other habits. It's funny. We have a really detailed goal setting process that has been evolving for a little over 10 years. And my wife and I do a retreat this time of year, and we get on the same page for our someday goals and our 5-year goals, so we know what to do next year. So where do we want to be in 5 years? Well, based on that, what do we need to do next year? That's the question we ask. And at the end of this kind of long weekend of planning, I guess for 4 or 5 years, my notebook's not within reach. I'll usually ask, what are the core habits that would support 90% of these goals? And I break it down. Like, I have my writing habit. I try to read a book a week, which is part of my writing habit as well, because if I'm not reading, I don't usually write very well.
Oh, interesting.
I have a networking habit. So for me, this is the introvert's networking, so don't laugh. But every Wednesday morning, I try to have coffee with a stranger. And my only criteria is that they be someone who's really cool. So I'll reach out to people who are good designers, good whatever. And I'm just trying to build a network of people that other people have said, well, you know that Jake and Gino guys, they're really amazing investors. Well, I don't do any apartment investing right now, but I would reach out to you and say, hey, can I treat you to breakfast? And build my network very methodically. And worst case scenario, every year I get to add 50 people to my database. So I have habits in the areas that really matter to me. And I meet with my coach every 2 weeks. And the first thing he asks me is about those habits. How many books did you read? How many people did you meet? How many writing days did you have? That sort of thing. And I experiment every now and then with like adding a new habit. Like I tried meditation last year, did it 159 days in a row. And it just wasn't doing anything for me. I know it's like everybody swears by it, but it wasn't doing anything for me. I sleep like a baby anyway. So I just like, forget it.
Man.
This is just adding complexity to my life. Yep. I'm not knocking it. I know people who swear by it. And that's why I tried it for so long. I just like, I had it listed. I tried it. I didn't feel it for me. And so I went to something else.
It's like the new thing. Everyone is like talking about cold showers or dunking themselves in an ice tank. And I'm like, dude, I get in the shower, I crank that SOB up hot, and I'm telling you, ideas start flowing. My brain likes it warm, and I'm just not getting away from it. I don't care how many people tell me to dunk myself like a polar bear. I'm not doing it. So
Tony Robbins does that, right? He jumps in a pool of cold water every day. So
everybody, like I see all these guys on Instagram. It's like, oh, I just dunked myself in a freezing pit of water today. I'm like, great, man. I'm not doing it though.
I kind of am with you on that. And not that I've ever really tried it. It just doesn't sound appealing at all. You'd have to really sell me hard on that one.
Yeah. And I'm like, guys, I'll a nice, warm shower. I shut it down and I actually get a flood of ideas coming. I'm like literally getting out of the shower many times trying to write stuff down. So I'm like, I'm good. I don't need to go there. So, how about a book recommendation for the listeners?
Oh gosh, I'm looking at my shelf. Does it need to be an investing book?
No, how about something that's gonna positively impact someone's life if they read it?
Okay, I'm going to give you a couple of options. I just looked at a book I read earlier this year by a guy named Scott Trench. He's part of the Bigger Pockets Network, and
yes.
He wrote a book called Set for Life. And there were a couple of really big things I took out of that. He goes into great detail on house hacking. So at the beginning, I think, and he supported that for me, number one thing that keeps people from being investors is they never save up a down payment. And so like that's an actual hurdle you have to overcome, like being credit worthy and actually having a minimum amount of cash to start the journey. And he has really great wisdom on how to aggressively save. And one of his things is you figure out all your expense categories and you start by trying to cut your biggest ones first. And I know so many people who start trying to save money and they cut their Starbucks coffee or they cut their date nights out with their wife. And that's usually 5% of their entertainment budget is nothing. Mm-hmm. But if you took 5% out of their school debt or their car payment or their house payment, now that adds up to a lot of money that they could save for investing. So I love that book. I underlined a ton in that book. And in the self-improvement, 2 books, I've got like 3 of them over there. I mentioned Defining Decade, which I give to young people all the time. It's just a lot of really good, timeless wisdom from this woman named Meg Jay, and a book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. I give that away. It's technically for writers, but it's a cult book among entrepreneurs because the whole idea is for writers, every day you should be writing. And he has this ongoing dialogue about battling the resistance that every day, no matter how good you are, you still resist doing what you need to do. Mm-hmm. So as an investor, you just change the verbiage. Instead of a writer, as an investor, how am I battling the resistance to living within my means? So I have the down payment, to networking, so I have deals, blah, 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 blah. And usually you can get some good insight. So that would be not 1 book, but 3 books from the One Thing Guy.
All right. The One Thing Guy. The War of Art sounds very interesting. I'm definitely going to check that out. Never heard of that.
It's a cult classic. It's probably
that's that you sold
1,000 reviews on Amazon or something stupid.
Once you said cult classic, I was like immediately sold. So I want to check that out. You got me on that one. What project are you excited about right now?
we just launched around the one thing. We just did our first ever goal setting retreat. I told you that I've been doing this with my wife for 10 years. And we get requests all the time. So we invited everybody on our email list, and we ended up having about 250 people flying to Austin for 2 days to get really clear. And I've read like 3 thank you notes today. So I'm super excited for that, because that's just like an organic thing that bubbled up to the surface. And like a good entrepreneur, every now and then you're like, oh, let's just see if this works. And it really told me that next year, not only are we going to do it again, but we ought to make sure that people know to bring their spouses. That was the number one complaint, was if I'd known what this was, I would have brought my husband, or I would have brought my wife. So I'm still kind of on a high. That was last week. I'm still kind of on a high from that. But what we're doing is we're trying to build out training so that people can live this book. And if you can't tell, the reason I'm still partners with Gary is whatever we write about, I'm willing to be a guinea pig too. He says this is the way to do it, and I'll go straight out there. Like he said, you should invest in residential real estate. I went right out there with my wife and said, guess what? We're going to be investors. She's like, all right. She's like, she's so gung-ho. She's great. So we'll go out and we'll do this stuff. But the Millionaire Real Estate Investor, as an introduction to investing, it's a little dated on how to invest. But the big ideas about money, and this book, The One Thing, they've absolutely transformed my life.
I love how you were just discussing about the feedback from your customers on this most recent event that you did, and you're just doing the entrepreneurial thing. Here's the feedback, and now we're going to pivot a little bit, right? Just a little pivot. We're going to bring the wives in, and let's see how awesome it can be next year. So that got me jacked up too. Well,
it's just like a minimally viable product. Like, it's not software.
Yeah.
We didn't really even have a good workbook. It was just some stuff we photocopied, but we knew that there were exercises that we did that other people said that was really helpful. And so we did the minimum, we got it validated, and they told us what to do next. And that's what, like, when your audience says yes, and they say, and just add this, then you're on the right path to something fun.
Yep, absolutely. So what's the best place for listeners to get the book, to maybe attend the next event? Where's the landing page here?
If you go to theonething.com with the number 1, all of our training's up there, and people can sign up for the newsletter. We try not to harass people on our newsletter list too much. We have a podcast, and we do talk about that like once a week. But then you also get offers to all of our events. So that's probably the one-stop shop for everything.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Gino, you have anything else?
I guess we can go on for hours, because this has been really educational for me. I think everyone who's in multifamily has got to use the framework. They've got to, number 1, buy the book, and I'll keep them on the hook. I know Jay might not want them to be on the hook, but I'm saying they've got to go out, buy the book.
Buy the book already.
Yeah, come on. $20. That's all it is. The best $20 they'll spend. Seriously. I mean, it was really, Hey, Mr. Stenziano, we're going to go 50-50, okay? 50-50, me and you. So seriously, I mean, it was an awesome book. I mean, I loved it. I'm so thankful that Jay's been on the call with us. It's just reinforced for me the one thing. The one thing for me is my family, and everything from there emanates. So it just reinforced all my beliefs. So I appreciate Jay being on today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jay. Really had a really good time.
Thanks for having me, guys. Real pleasure. I love what y'all are doing. Teach people to be investors. It's a transformative thing. When people get financial freedom, they can live the life they need to live. And that's a really great thing that y'all are teaching people how to do.
Thank you.
We trust that you enjoyed the Wheelbarrow Profits podcast. Visit JakeandGino.com, your one-stop shop for everything multifamily. See you next time when Jake and Gino share more of their investing secrets with you.